be fantastic to welcome Femi Bola, who hopefully some of you know, but if you don't, she was formerly headed up all of the employability careers and things at the University of East London, then made the very sensible decision to stop doing that and to do things like travel around the world and exciting stuff that she was telling me about the other week. She spoke at our conference 4 or 5 years ago in Sheffield and did a great keynote there. And we really wanted to get her back. We thought it'd been far too long since we heard from you, Femi. So I'm going to hand over to you and to hear from you on with the enigmatic title of "Don't Touch My Hair." So looking forward to hearing about that. Over to you if you're all good to go.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Martin and Grateful, for asking me to do the keynote. I thought a lot about what I was going to say, so hello to everybody, about the issues around, I suppose, what the Black Lives Matter has made us all kind of think about. And I know that the title of my presentation is a bit strange, but it'll all become clear as I go along. So I'll start off with "Don't Touch My Hair." One thing that I suppose what's happened with George Floyd and COVID-19 is there's been a highlight on change. Change in the way we work, change in the way some of us think, change in the way the things we do. And the terrible situation that George Floyd highlighted, the treatment of people of color by the police and also by society, coincided with COVID-19. Lots of people being at home and actually seeing the video, being able to think about it, being able to comment about it, and also to be able to go on the streets and make their views known. So it was kind of like a perfect storm, but everybody was asking governments, organizations to kind of think about change. And the interesting thing was, for me, was I think many people, many professional people thought that things had changed. The thing with this situation was it proved things hadn't changed that much. Black Lives Matter was highlighting the fact that the dial hadn't moved that far, and that we'd been maybe in a bubble around in the diversity and inclusion space. And actually the situation in the summer burst that bubble. George Floyd and COVID-19 have made people think about things very differently in some cases. And the expectations around change have definitely moved on. And that's what made me think of "Don't Touch My Hair." This for me was a "don't touch my hair" moment. And as I say, I'll come back to that and explain why. And the other thing that happened at the time, once people understood an organization understood the situation around George Floyd and how their Black employees may have been feeling, how their Black customers had been feeling, organizations started putting out statements. In some organizations, the bigger ones, actually taking space in newspapers and saying this was their position in regard to the situation around the George Floyd incident and also the Black Lives Matter movement. So people started putting out statements, they started stating their position, and some organizations started changing their missions in terms of recruiting Black staff, also in terms of the way they felt their organization should feel to the Black staff that they actually employed. And I remember sitting down and thinking, I know there's going to be a committee, there's going to be a working party, there's going to be a D&I group, there's going to be lots and lots of talking, because in some ways we've been to this place before. And I know I've sat in meetings talking about the attainment gap in organizations, and that we've talked and talked and talked and we've gathered information, but in a way, things didn't move forward, because it really does take people to want to go beyond findings and reports, because we've been to that place. And in some places, we have the findings and we have the report. We don't even have to do that work again. What people now, and what the Black Lives Movement wanted and wants, is action and change. And I mean, some of the Black organizations have been saying, how long does this last? Because I know some of the charities and charitable organizations that I know that work in the D&I space have suddenly had donations from people they hadn't heard of. Some people are calling it guilt money. Other people are saying this is fantastic. However, we need to go beyond that as organizations, whether that be employers or universities, and think about action and real change. Because whether you're an employer or a university, these people on the streets, and the majority of whom were white, were demanding change, and they are your current customers or future customers, and they are expecting organizations, institutions to be and feel different. In terms of employers, I was thinking in that around what would I say to you, and I think employers have been faithful. They've said when there's a situation, let's do some training. And I've been in this D&I space for more than 20 years now, and I've seen equalities training, often staff doing it very reluctantly, to unconscious bias training. And yes, these are good things. However, we need to move from that to organizations saying, we want to change the way we do things around here. We want to change our culture. We want to really be doing something different, especially in terms of getting people who are different into our organizations. We need to change what we've always done so we get something different, because if we don't, we'll always get what we got before. And I think that that's one thing. This is an opportunity for employers to really think about that. And I mean, in that respect, moving from training to examining intention, because often universities are employers too. I mean, an example of that was when I was working at the University of East London, one of the senior management team managed to set up a meeting at Clarence House, because Prince Charles was looking at the makeup of the staff, the support staff in his office. And he really wanted to move to having people from different socioeconomic groups and people of color. And I went to the meeting with the senior management team member, and I remember us sitting in Clarence House, and one of the questions I asked was, where do you currently recruit? And they said, oh, we regularly put ads in the Lady. And I knew then that although their intention was good, they need to examine their intention, because I didn't think many people in the boroughs that in Newham, Tower Hamlets, Hackney and Lewisham, where many of our students came, actually knew what the Lady was or where they were going to get a copy. So I think this is an opportunity for you as employers to examine your intention. Yes, you want to do good, you want to change, but what methods? If you're using the Lady to recruit for people, you're going to struggle to get anybody who's of a particular background to apply. So I think taking a breath and examine your intention, and whether your processes, whether your procedures, whether the things you do actually match your intention to change, is a good time to think about that. Now, also probably in this pandemic, and when resources are not available sometimes when you're thinking of hiring, one of the options is mentoring. And I'm a really, really big fan of mentoring schemes. I set them up myself, and I do think they change the mentee and the mentor. However, I do believe it's a safe option, because it often means you don't have to bring anybody into your organization that's different. They don't have to be there on a daily basis. They don't have to be on your payroll. And they also sometimes send out the message that the people that you're mentoring need fixing. They need to do something different. They need to be different to fit in. And I think you need to think about how mentoring schemes work and how they can add value. And in this particular at point in time, have to be careful how we use mentoring schemes, and that they're not the safe option. We still, for change, you do need to hire somebody who looks different, who sounds different perhaps, who has a different background to the hiring manager. And that isn't always brought about by mentoring. And also, the other thing I think, the CEOs who were putting out messages in newspapers, I know that both of my children had messages from their CEOs to their Black staff saying that we know that this is a hard time for you, we know you're hurting. I think this is an opportunity for organizations to think about whether they're sticky environments for people who are different. Because often people get through the arduous recruitment hurdles, and then they find out that the culture, the environment isn't right for somebody who's different. And I can give you an example of that something that happened this week, where a Black female graduate was going for an opportunity in PR, and had gone through the initial hurdles, got to the interview, and the first 3 questions were these. Can you please tell us how to pronounce your name? I suppose a reasonable question. The second question was, I think it was, let me get it right so that I don't get it wrong. I think one of the first question was, can you get me, can you tell me how to pronounce your name? The other question was, when did you come to this country? She was born in this country. And I'll try and remember the second question. It's just slipped my mind. This was for a PR role. Now, this was the fact that the person had got to interview. This was somebody that organization was really, really interested in. However, when she was offered the job, she turned it down. And then she sent an email to the company to talk to them about the kind of inappropriateness of their first 3 questions. Now, unless you start thinking about your culture and why those kinds of things, when would you have asked a white candidate those questions? You will not attract talent and from the Black community or from people that are different, and if you do, you won't be able to keep them. So that is where "Don't Touch My Hair" comes in, because I run sessions for graduates when they're working in environments where they're in a minorities, it's things like PR. And one of the questions the females often say, because they're often the only Black female on the floor, or maybe there's 2 in the organization, is they say to me, "Femi, they keep asking me, can they touch my hair?" And I say to them, well, no, actually, because they wouldn't be touching anybody else's hair. But this is not 1980, it's not 1970, it's not 1960, it's 2020. And people still say to Black females, "Can I touch your hair?" And so we still have "Don't touch my hair" moments now. So employers need to think, and that's whether they're education employers, whether they're finance or IT, is What is your culture? Do people feel they can say to somebody, can I touch your hair? And that's Black Lives Matters, all of these things, this summer has brought those things to the fore. Black graduates are talking about these things online. And also, people, many organizations have given platforms to their Black staff to actually say how they've been feeling. And these are the type of issues that come up. So really, don't touch my hair. Whoops, go to the next one. See, oops, all right. And for universities, because I know university colleagues are listening as well, I'd like to talk to them about better preparation. And that's more than a CV. I mean, I know that I've run career services and everybody's talking about you've got to get your CV right. You've got to understand what a CV looks like. But many applications are online now. So actually you need to know how to fill in an application. You need to understand what employers are looking for in terms of personal statements in applications. But you also need to understand the cultures of organizations where you may be in a minority and how that will require you to be resilient, really resilient. I've had graduates go into companies where there's a floor of 300 people and they are the only Black person there or the only person of color, and it's a tough gig. So when you're preparing students, you need to be able to have those discussions about race. And that is why organizations need, universities need to have more people of color in their careers teams, in their admin teams, people who can have these conversations if they feel as white colleagues they can't. Because we need to be honest and we need to have people who've had those experiences who can talk about how they've had to be resilient. So you really need to understand your student body, not just in terms of number, but what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what they feel the barriers are. And your employers too, universities, you're often one of the biggest employers in an area. And I know from working in universities that sometimes it's a case of physician, heal thyself. You'll find that some universities are loath to employ their own students. And I remember one of my jobs was always going out there and selling my students because the majority of them were BAME, were from lower socioeconomic groups, going to employers and saying, I really think you should change the way you look at recruitment. You should consider our students. And I remember one of the managers that I met saying to me, I've been on your website. I've seen your senior management team. There's only one Asian geezer in it. So now you're talking to me. So I do think, physician, heal thyself. How are you going to get senior administrators in universities that look like me and sound like me? Because at the top of these institutions, they are very white. It is the Guinness effect. You need to believe in your product. I know I've been with managers in universities and they said, oh no, we've had such terrible applications from our own students. I mean, that's like Apple buying Samsung. Universities, you need to produce graduates that you feel are employable and that you could employ yourselves. So I think that's something that you really kind of need to think about. Finally, from me, I think this summer, these last 6-7 months have made me think that employers need to take courage. Then it's an opportunity to be brave, to create new systems based on culture, not process. It's so easy to set up a graduate scheme, online or offline, that's just based on process and gets you the same people that you've always got. Now, as I think I've said this online previously, that this process, which is supposed to lower risk, doesn't take risk away, because even in organizations that have got lots of white middle-class graduates, they still have problems around stickiness, they have problems around attendance, they have problems around people getting the work done. So you still have those problems because it's all about people. And what you've done is just create processes that exclude some people for no good reason. So that is an opportunity to look at those processes and to really, for the Black staff that you have already, and that is universities and employers, is to understand sponsorship. And I know that's been key in my career as a Black woman. I've had sponsors, people who spoke about me when I wasn't in the room and said good things, said good things, promoted me. And it's very, very important for Black staff to have sponsors. It's good to have mentors, but sponsors are so much more important. People who spot talent and spot talent from Black and people, and from people who are not the usual suspects, and sponsor them and think they're worthy of progression. And also, we still can't get away from somebody needs to be accountable for change. Change needs to be measured. How many Black staff did we have in 2018 and how many Black staff have we got in 2021? And then action needs to be taken. And I've been speaking to employers and saying, does somebody's bonus need to depend on this? In terms of universities, I think you need to take real ownership, because as I say, you can be big employers yourselves. So you need to look at what you do and stop having countless meetings around the attainment gap, and maybe do something more substantial and positive around it. And if you are not clear about what you need today, form partnerships and take advice. And I often think universities say, well, we haven't got enough money to do this. Well, I feel just like employers need to think about their customer base, and universities need to think about theirs. Because even though I think, Black people form about 3% of the population, they're 8% of the university population. So they're putting their faith in you as institutions to change their lives. Ask questions and listen to your students, but not the usual questions, the really sticky questions, the hard questions about race, identity, and how they feel that your university is handling it. Again, you need accountability, measurement, and action, because universities are very good at measuring things, but sometimes I think action is something that gets left behind. And wouldn't it be, I know universities love to be #1 university for, what about being #1 university for diversity and inclusion? So that's it from me. I've just thrown those things out there. I'm open to any comments, questions, and I just thought if you want to think more about don't touch my hair, I hope this works. Solange says something about this. I'm not sure it's going to work. Yes. So this might work, it might not. Let's see. Let's see if it will.
We heard that for a minute.
She doesn't want anybody touching her either.
When it's the feelings I wear, don't touch my soul.
She doesn't want anybody touching her hair, it's touching her soul.
When it's a rhythm I know, don't touch my crown.
Don't touch her crown.
They see the vision I've found.
Right. I will end it there and go back to, I hope, where I was before. Let me close this. Right. That's it. So.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Femi. Really fantastic stuff, and wonderful to hear from you after like 4 or 5 years since you last spoke at our event. We've got probably 5 minutes for some questions if anyone has any, and I'll try and kind of look out for there weren't any questions come through on the chat, but there was actually huge amounts of comment, which you can probably catch up on, Femi, after, because I think people were hugely engrossed and tipping in a huge amount of personal experience and also comment into the chat just there. So any questions though, while we have Femi here? Looking around.
Have I stunned everybody into silence?
Yeah, I think so. I want to know. I want to know what the Lady magazine is, but that's really not a relevant question. I've never heard of it either. But then I grew up in Bradford, so. So any?
Can I ask a question, Martin?
Yeah, go for it, Stephen.
Yeah, Steve here. I just wondered, Femi, it's a question I've been asking for a little while actually. Are you positive at the moment? Because you and I had a few conversations for the last few weeks. I mean, or are you, I can be a little bit too cynical sometimes. Think kind of, yeah, there's there is a lot of attention on this issue at the moment. People are very focused on it. But in 6 months' time, actually, will there be another headline that's diverted people in another initiative that people get round? Or are you a bit more hopeful that we might see lasting change as a result of what has been a very difficult few months?
I am positive, but I think I've always been like that. I've worked in this D&I space for a long time. When it was called, quite all the different names it's been called. And I always feel if just one thing changes, even if there's just one hire in one organization, a hire that was different, somebody doing something different, it just inspires me and gives me hope. And I just think that people just sometimes don't know how to do it. I also feel that at times like this, we do need to be honest. And I think that having those honest conversations, I mean, people have said, oh, in some of the corporates, but one of my children said, oh, can they call us Black? And I said, well, tell them they can call you Black because your mum and dad have told you that you're Black and we've all realized. So it's kind of those kinds of sensitivities that people think are there. But when people want to have genuine conversations around change, people don't have to worry about that. So I am ever hopeful and excited about what could happen, what can happen. So I feel good.
Fantastic, thanks, Femi.
Martin, can I come in, Martin?
Yeah, go for it, Connor. Thanks.
Hi, thanks, Femi. I've put a comment in. That was great, and really good challenges for us all. We've had significant conversations in my directorate, and on language come up, and I was trying to help people feel comfortable with it doesn't really matter if we get the language wrong in the first instance. We have in the university, we've got a group of staff and students have come together to come up with a term. They prefer the term of AAMG, which is African, Asian, and minority groups. That's the preferred way that they would like to be referred to. We then use both within normal stats for university or things like graduate outcomes. It's BAME. My working assumption is we're not going to solve that now. I'd rather get on with action. I'm just interested in your view of labels and terminology.
Well, to be honest, in the time that I've been working, we've had Black, Asian and minority ethnic, we've had Black, Asian and ethnic minority. We've been called a lot of different things. And to be honest, there people will say they want one thing or another, but what is important is the change really, and actually the opportunities that can come from that change. We can argue, 30 years ago, I was going to a Black women's group where we were arguing about who could be Black. Now, I remember being there when a Turkish woman came in and a whole load of Black women said, she's not Black. And I said, well, if she's Turkish and she wants to be Black, let her, because there's a whole load of trouble being Black. She might as well join us. So
I think that's partly what we were experiencing. There was a sort of sense of they wanted to get the terms right as opposed to tackle the issue. And I think the issue is the thing we need to be tackling.
Absolutely.
And inequity generally is what we have to tackle.
Absolutely.
And don't worry about, you know, being a little bit clumsy in how we express things, because I want to address the issue.
Exactly. That's the most important thing.
Thank you.
Thanks, Colin. Okay, probably got time for one last question, and then we'll take a quick break and go into discussion groups. Any last question?
Can I ask a question, Martin? It's Judith.
Yeah, is that Judith?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Hi, Femi.
Hi.
I miss you in the careers world and your sensible voice, can I say?
Thank you.
We've been like pushing out all these case studies about our students for Black History Month, and I just want to ask you about your experience of working with students, because what's really striking in the case studies compared to the non-Black students is the language and the words resilience and perseverance and creating their own opportunities, and their tips to students about never giving up, no barriers. The contrast is huge as we're looking at them. And it's been quite, I mean, it's very humbling reading them, but it's also that kind of stereotype that you see of people, and now I'm thinking it's not a stereotype, of Black parents saying to kids, you have to work harder, you have to be better. And it's really coming through in these case studies. Is that your experience of the students you worked with at East London as well, and that you work with now?
Absolutely. I think that your parents do, apart from telling you that you're Black, they do tell you that it's going to be tough out there, and they do tell you you have to be better, and that isn't always helpful to you as an individual, thinking that you've got this massive mountain to climb. But on the other hand, when I look at what happened to that graduate going to that interview, how do we pronounce your name? Were you born in this country? You do have to have that kind of resilience, and you also have to be able to decide whether you're going to fight it. Are you going to tell that employer that wasn't appropriate? Are you going to tell that person that you weren't happy with that particular situation? And I think that those case studies are highlighting how it is tough when you go into that world, into the world of employment, and people have all these views, or they have ideas about you as a group, or what you can achieve, what you're capable of. And also they're starting maybe in their minds with the fact that you're going to fail rather than you're going to succeed. So somebody said to me years ago that real equalities for any Black employee is the opportunity to fail and to do a bad job as just like their white colleagues.
Oh yeah.
Because somehow there's this expectation that you've got to get in over that barrier, that you're going to do a good job, so it's presumed that you're not going to do a good job, and that's where that resilience comes from. And I know myself, having been in that situation where you're the only one, and you're thinking, I've got to get it right, I can't afford to muck this up. And I'm sure that your graduates are reflecting that back to you, and it's our reality, it's our lived reality. And what I think that students just need to be prepared for that, and that's where those honest conversations around race, like, so for example, knowing that certain professions are going to treat you in particular ways, and you need to be ready for that.
And also those qualities are what, in my mind, when I read that, the resilience, the proactivity, being entrepreneurial about it, is just immense qualities that employers should want to be hiring them for in the first place.
Absolutely. But often what happens with the BAME graduate, they are not equipped with the language to be able to package that resilience in a way that an employer would understand. And so, for example, if I say to graduates who've worked in, they'll say, they've managed to be working in retail for 3 years, whereas their white colleague may have got an internship at a corporate for the summer. And I say to them, that person at KPMG didn't touch £5. They got a few papers to shuffle around, and they went to a few meetings. You had £3,000 in your till at Lidl. It couldn't be a penny more, it couldn't be a penny less. And they kept you for 3 years. So they didn't, and no employer keeps somebody for 3 years to do rubbish. But how do they package that so an employer actually sees value in it? That's where the difficulty comes.
Thank you.
Okay, no worries. Good to see you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Femi. So I'm going to have to wrap it up there, but thank you
No problem.
so much, Femi. Just brilliant and just really challenging, and in terms of particularly examining our intention, being brave, and then also, you know, kind of, you know, sponsors, be mentors, you know, trying to make that kind of thing happen. So thank you so much again for being with us, and sharing your insights. So great to see you as well.
Great to see you.
Thank you.